Good morning, North America, and welcome back to another show. Today, I have a very special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Hi, I'm Gracie Spalding. I'm studying here at Bellarmine. I am a senior. I'm studying medical laboratory science with a minor in Spanish.
Excellent, excellent. Now that minor in Spanish, have you done anything interesting with that minor in Spanish?
Thankfully, I have. It's been a dream of mine since high school to get to study abroad, actually. I've never done, prior to college, I'd never really done any international study or any international traveling. So I really wanted to use that Spanish and put it to use in an international setting. So I looked into it here at Bellarmine, and 2 summers ago, I actually went over to Spain for a month over the summer.
Excellent. Now, where was the main destination in Spain that you went?
So we were centered in a small town called Segovia that's an hour away from Madrid, pretty central in Spain. So we weren't near a beach or anything, but it was absolutely beautiful.
Did you ever go to a beach?
I did not, unfortunately. We had plans to travel during the long weekend, but some logistical stuff got in the way, but a few of my classmates did on that weekend too.
Is there an airport in Segovia?
I don't believe so. If it is, it's really tiny. We flew into Madrid, and it's a small hour-long trip, so people make that trip every day.
All right.
For commutes.
Excellent. Now, what was it like to actually immerse yourself into that culture? Because I know it's different. So, did you speak the language with locals and everything like that?
So the big thing, it depended on where you were at in Spain. So Madrid that we flew into, most of it, there were English and Spanish translations just to make it a little bit more international. But in Segovia, because it was such a small town, most people spoke minimal English, which was fascinating for us and really, really helpful. So I did get to speak with a lot of locals, since that was my day-to-day, was kind of going through the cafes and meeting people and interacting with those people in our day-to-day lives. And classes were entirely in Spanish as well. We even had a local teacher for my culture and poetry class, which was really cool.
Excellent. In terms of, I find this very interesting. I've always been into the sort of dialect, because, when you go to Kentucky, people speak very differently. In terms of like Tennessee, people speak differently in Tennessee. Now, when you were in Spain, did they have different dialects everywhere you went? Was it difficult to communicate with people in some sections?
It really depended. A lot of people looked at us and they could tell that we were foreigners, so a lot of people would try to do English, but since it was easier for us to communicate in Spanish, and that tended to help. Spain itself actually has a dialect that is different from Latin America and Central and South America. They have a completely different verb tense for you all. So they utilize something that is called vosotros, that is entirely only in Spain, so Latin America doesn't use it at all. And I was taught by a lot of Latin American teachers. So getting used to the teachers referring to us with that different conjugation of verbs was a kind of a loop. And they also they don't pronounce the Z the same way.
Right.
Yeah, corazón.
Cabeza.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was very weird too, especially when Latin America, it's corazón, very sharp, very distinct. And so when they're speaking fast to you, that was a little bit of like oh, hang on now. And there were a few people that spoke very quickly, including my local teacher so I had to kind of translate for some of my classmates, since I've had a little bit more experience with my job getting to speak with natives.
Do you have experience with your job speaking with natives? What do you do?
So I work over at Chick-fil-A. I have worked there for about 5.5 years now. I'm a trainer. But for the first little bit, I worked in the front of house, and all of the kitchen, more or less, for the most part, has been Hispanic. So I would kind of chat with them. I'm a very chatty individual, and so I eventually since I knew bits and pieces in high school from Spanish 1, 2, and 3, I asked them to help me to learn, so they would correct me, give me other words, talk to me in Spanish, whereas a lot of the front of house couldn't do that. So I also got cross-trained in the back as my Spanish improved when we needed a lot more people in the back. So I've actually been in shifts where I will speak for 8 hours straight entirely in Spanish to people. And so that has really helped me a lot, especially with a lot of slang, because I know book Spanish. I don't necessarily know as much of the slang, and so I got to learn Mexican slang, Guatemalan slang, Puerto Rican slang as well.
Yeah, that's difficult because I don't know any slang. I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's not like you, where I can go and communicate with, Mexican people in the back. I have no clue what they're saying,
It's tough. It was such a big learning curve. I felt so dumb some of the time because I would ask them to repeat things 4, 5, 6 times, and they would do it because it's one thing to listen to tapes It's another thing to be listening with all the machinery and beeping and all the stuff in a kitchen too, some of the yelling that would happen. So that was a big thing for me, but eventually it got a lot easier. I just had to kind of push through that learning curve.
Definitely. Now, when it comes to when you were in Spain, were there any destinations that you kind of fell in love with at all?
Oh my goodness. I mean, everywhere we went, it was just incredible. I like to joke that Spain still has my heart, and it does to a certain extent. I miss Louisville, but I'm definitely going back after graduation. So Segovia itself was just absolutely stunning. There were so many beautiful places, and even though it was a smaller town, it was very well kept, very classic architecture of like what you would imagine a small European town would be. Yeah. And then and also every weekend I went to Mass over at the Basilica, the Segovian Cathedral. And Basilica isn't quite accurate, it was a cathedral. The Segovian Cathedral was the second most recent Gothic cathedral to be built. So I got to see the very late Gothic architecture, which had bigger windows than the prior. So it was a lot more sunlight, and it was just, oh my goodness, it was stunning. We also went to Salamanca, which has the second oldest university in Europe as well, which was so cool to get to see that. And then just all of the churches over there were just absolutely stunning, and you couldn't go anywhere without seeing just these fantastically huge pieces of architecture. And then Madrid, of course, is very much a historic New York.
Yeah.
It's an interesting blend of modern, but still they have that original architecture over it too.
Was it too city-like, would you say?
Madrid?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that. I think they did a good job of interspersing it. It definitely felt very city-like. It did feel, like I said, it did feel very much like New York, but because of the older architecture, it still felt very different. It didn't feel quite as modern as New York does, or cold.
Yeah.
And they also had a lot of beautiful parks. The parks were absolutely stunning that were interspersed throughout it. And it's also pretty relatively well spread out. There are different neighborhoods that you can go and explore, especially going through the metro and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say that it was too much. It would have been overwhelming if we had been centered there, though, just because it was my first time traveling without my family and just with like peers.
That's awesome. Okay, were there any destinations that you wish you could have gone? Because when I think about Spain, I think about one place, and I don't know why I think about this place, but I think about Granada.
Really?
Yes.
That's such an interesting choice.
Granada looks amazing, and so does Malaga. Is it Malaga? Is that how they pronounce it?
Malaga?
Yeah.
I believe that if I saw it written out, it's probably Malaga.
They have a huge beach that looks amazing, and I don't know, their architecture there looks incredible. Did you ever think about those places, or did you think about maybe Barcelona, maybe Bilbao? Is Bilbao a place as well?
Bilbao is a place over there. That's actually where one of my classmates went to travel. I didn't get to talk to her that much about it since she went to a few different places. I wanted to go on the long trip to Valencia, which would have been absolutely stunning. And I had a particular interest as a Catholic in seeing La Sagrada Familia, since that is the longest working cathedral project in the world. I still want to see it when it's completed, and I want to say it's within the next 10 years it'll be finished. So I wanted to go see those. Unfortunately, I did not. I also did want to eat paella in Valencia, since that's where it was made. But we did get some pretty good paella over there anyways from our senora, because she made us what she would have made for her grandkids. So it was just like fresh, authentic, simple, but just so delicious Spanish food.
Did you have tapas?
Oh, yes, we did. So we would, it was an interesting difference from the U.S. versus here, is that the U.S. drinking is a very heavy activity, if you will. It's intense oftentimes, whereas over in Spain, people would drink, but it would be much more moderate, much more integrated into day life. So you could go and have a glass of wine at lunch, and since all the cities were walkable, people really didn't worry about DUIs or getting a ride or anything like that. And so there would be some times where you could go to a restaurant, and if it was before dinner, they'd have tapas from the restaurants, and so you could order a glass of wine, and with each glass of wine there would be tapas if you wished.
Was it cheap?
The wine was dirt cheap in comparison to the U.S. because they don't have the import taxes from Italy and some of the other wineries that were around there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, were there like any awkward conversations that you had with a stranger?
Ooh, that's a good question. Awkward conversations. For the most part, a lot of our conversations were with merchants or people who we interacted with because we were like shopping or buying something at a restaurant. We didn't have the chance as much to meet some of the natives, although some people were able to during different events. There was like a big music festival and things like that that happened. They have a music festival over in Segovia for their patron saints at the end of June. So I'll send you some of the photos, but I mean the streets were covered in people from front to back, huge like giant puppets that they called gigantes, and then they had smaller people who had character heads that would take brooms and whack people with them, that some of them were demons, some of them were, so it was a very interesting cultural kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there were other nights for the music festival where bands would walk around the streets. And so if you liked a particular band, you'd follow them down the street. So It's an
interesting tradition, you know? I
It
don't
is
feel like we have
phenomenal.
anything like that here.
Absolutely not. People came in, there were more vendors who came in from Madrid to Segovia because they knew people would be going to Segovia for these several nights. And so there were tons of, in the common squares, you could barely move because there were so many people lined up to just see this band that's playing. You couldn't get into any of the restaurants or anything, like you'd have to squeeze past people. So in the sense of awkward conversations, it was pretty limited unless you like bumped into someone and it kind of got a little weird. But sometimes you'd also see though like a waiter at a restaurant at like a restaurant another evening or something like that. It was kind of cool because it was a small town to see that kind of interconnectedness of recognition despite not being there that long.
Like the Louisville of Spain.
A little bit. It's definitely a lot smaller than Louisville. It was walkable by like 20 minutes either way.
Cool.
So.
Can you elaborate a little bit on, I guess, how do I get involved in this kind of community of studying abroad and traveling? Because I know for myself, I want to go out there and I want to go to Europe. Can you kind of tell some Bellarmine students here, how do I get involved in this sort of thing?
Absolutely. So I was very intentional about it because it has been my dream for a while, and I was also lucky enough that the honors program here offered a little stipend specifically for travel because they want to encourage that. But throughout my Spanish program, my professor, he's the one who helps to orchestrate he was the one who helped to orchestrate these trips at the time. And so he was very big on kind of telling us about it. But even if you don't have any sort of connection in that way, the study abroad office is, I believe it's still located in the library. They are just super sweet, phenomenal people, super easy to work with. Technically, my trip wasn't through Bellarmine. It was Bellarmine working with KIIS so that we could study abroad. But we were able to, they connected us to them, they walked us through the entire process, and there's like informational gatherings, I believe, every semester so that you can get ready for it. Mine was after sophomore year, the summer after sophomore year. So, but I had to prep for it even my freshman year, just because there was a lot of paperwork, a lot of logistics, and part of that was also COVID, because we were unsure about what those COVID regulations would look like at the time. But it was certainly well worth it, despite a lot of just work going into it. And I would definitely encourage people to reach out to someone in the study abroad office. I believe it was Mrs. Grandinetti is a great resource for that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. We had a great time here. It's also been a great semester, and I've had a lot of fun talking with Gracie here. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday, and I hope you guys enjoy a lot more shows. There's a lot more shows to come, so make sure you tune in. Bye, guys. We'll see you later.
Awesome. I will say, I don't know if you should cut out the drinking part or not.
Oh, I don't need